Dr. Daisy Curtis has obtained a BA Geography degree, a PhD, and an MRes in Critical Human Geographies at the University of Exeter. Her research interests focus on the emergence of 5G network and its social impacts. Dr. Curtis gave us Laura Jones's paper about post-9/11 conspiracy discourse when we asked for an insight on how she conducts geographical research. We questioned Dr. Curtis on her reasoning behind choosing this paper, and she explained that it explores the conspiracy theory rhetoric which mirrors findings in her own 5G research. During the interview, Curtis explained her threefold strategy to research, implementing a feminist approach, and the difficulties she faced when communicating with the public. Using Dr. Curtis's research and wider reading, this presentation aims to explore her research methods further and how these produce contemporary geographical knowledges.
The feminist approach to geography is in response to the idea that the accounts written by women were disqualified as not scientific and too personal and subjective. Feminist geography in turn has made this criticism its strength, embracing qualitative methodology. This influenced both Dr. Curtis and Jones, as it emphasises the intersections between the private and public spheres, and in turn, it exposes the disciplinary and ethical necessity for incorporating everyday lives and marginal voices into research and analysis, which is concluded by Jones in her 2009 paper. Dr. Curtis has done this through her research in 5G conspiracies, using ethnographies, interviews, and discourse analysis. Yet in the interview, Curtis warns that it is important that people write about these marginal experiences, but how do you do that in a way that is ethically careful and is considerate of the broader situation? One approach to this question raised by Curtis is Savile's methodologies within humble geographies, a branch of feminist geographies. It promotes co-production of knowledge and acknowledges the theory of situated knowledge. For as seen in Figure 5, a geographer cannot be disembodied, as conventional assumptions argue, but instead, researchers play a role in knowledge production, especially in participatory research methods, such as ethnographies, as seen in Savile's paper, often embracing the consequences of emotional entanglements to enhance their research.
One of the qualitative methods Dr. Daisy Curtis uses in her threefold approach to geographical research is interviews. Glasser et al. Explains that interviews serve as excellent tools for gathering information during early stages of research because respondents can speak openly with no time limitations. The reading from Jones and our interview with Daisy exemplify how interviews produce a grounded theory to base further research on. Dr. Curtis explained that interviews she conducted with members of the Stop 5G community have given her an insight into the concerns and misconceptions some groups have about the emergence of 5G network. One specific area of focus she wrote about in her 2023 radio spectrum paper, and explained further in our in-person interview, was a growing discussion of electro-hypersensitivity. This is a condition where people experience adverse reactions to the presence of 5G. Winchester highlights how interviews contribute to critical realism within geographical methodologies. Daisy's exploration of this niche condition contributes to Winchester's theory of realism because non-replicable and broad representative data is produced. Therefore, Dr. Curtis's interview methods contribute to contemporary geographical knowledges through researching specific human experiences and setting up discussions for further exploration.
The second of the research methodologies that Dr. Curtis uses is discourse analysis. Discourse analysis is analysing language within its social context to infer meaning. Dr. Curtis utilised this form of research by attending events, looking at material online related to 5G, and analysed the discourse that was present. This included different themes, languages, analysing advertising around 5G, collating the common themes. This form of research allowed her to get a rounded view of the topic, as she was analysing data from different sources and perspectives. This relates to the set reading by Jones, as she undertook discourse analysis and demonstrated how different people created and performed different discourses. Comparing the interview with Dr. Curtis and the paper by Jones, both topics that they discuss, 5G and conspiracy surrounding 9/11 respectively, have corresponding dialects. James Paul G. explains the power of dialects as a form of language that connects certain groups of people and how language is used to express and build identities. This is further highlighted by Jones as she argues how conspiracy can be understood as a knowledge-producing discourse, on page 359, due to its nature of encompassing different positions. Moreover, a chapter from Rogers demonstrates how discourse studies provide a particular way of conceptualizing interactions, and this can be applied to both Dr. Curtis and the work of Jones. In terms of the impact on the production of contemporary geographical knowledges, discourse analysis allows geographers to explore the power dynamics within language and discourse, and how they impact representations. To this end, combined with feminist geography, discourse analysis has the power to make a vital contribution to contemporary geographical knowledges, as it also gives power to marginalised voices as a range of discourse is analysed. Furthermore, discourse analysis sheds a light on the formation of identities, which allows for an exploration of social constructs, as well as an understanding the society in which these identities exist to be further explored. Within our interview, Dr. Curtis spoke about one of her threefold research method approaches, being ethnographies. She then went on to discuss what these were and how they aided her in her research. Ethnographies are an immersive form of study where you delve into the beliefs and behaviours of different groups, commonly used by sociologists and anthropologists. Essentially, an ethnography is where you observe or participate in a community. Dr. Curtis attended different tech conferences and stopped 5G protests in order to gain first-hand experiences of their community. She observed how people worked and what conversations they were having. In 2020, when lockdown hit, Dr. Curtis was forced to adapt to these changes and completed research via digital ethnographies. Luckily, the Stop 5G community went online. Dr. Curtis undertook lurking on social media platforms. She joined these Facebook groups and started compiling screenshots and notes on the conversations that were emerging. To make it more ethical, she made sure that none of the data she collected could be traced back to those who wrote it. Ethnographies are a great research method, as they allow for flexibility. Researchers can adapt their methods on emerging insights and new discoveries, allowing for rich, detailed data. Not only this, but the researcher can actively engage with the community, which creates rapport and trust between the researcher and the participant, leading to a more authentic insight. However, in a paper by Nixon and Odoyo, they stated the weaknesses of ethnographies as a research method. Some of these included that it is difficult to get precise conclusions, it is time intensive, and it also comes with a lot of ethical considerations, such as informed consent and privacy.
After analysing Dr. Curtis's set reading by Laura Jones, we established that throughout research collection there is evidently an issue of power relations. During the interview, we asked Dr. Curtis if she had experienced this whilst collecting her own data. She explained that it was something she'd thought a lot about during her research, and that there was often a clear sense of power relations between herself and those she was researching. Initially, as a weird random student, she was ostracised by the Stop 5G protest group that she was researching. After her placement, Dr. Curtis became more widely recognised in the circle of research and did not feel that she was ousted in the same way. This idea contradicts a description by Rahim, where he explains that the researcher is by definition located in a privileged position compared to the research subjects. This was not always the case for Dr. Curtis, as her minority position in groups such as Stop 5G put her at a disadvantage where those she was researching had the upper hand. During our interview with Dr. Curtis, it became apparent that ethics and a certain type of behaviour was required during research, not only for Dr. Curtis, but also for intellectuals across the board. Whilst reading around the topic of ethics during wider reading, it became clear that as we move into a new century, ethics has become increasingly important. Within Chapter 2 of Ethics in Research, Anguinese and Helm explain that the increase in attention around ethics is to minimise harm to participants, collaborators, and the general public. For us to fully understand this, Dr. Curtis explained that when she was taking part in online lurking and using screenshots for her ethnography, she would consciously remove any details and block out personal information as not to expose anyone within the group without their consent. During the interview, she explained the Facebook groups she often joined were always public groups as opposed to private ones, and by doing this, she was being considerate of people's privacy.
Methodologies within Dr. Curtis's research have changed since the COVID-19 pandemic. Shkee mentions that COVID has caused geographical methods to take a combined approach, including positivist, interactionist and structuralist strategies to make sure as many people as possible can shift to new virtual lifestyles. Curtis alluded in our interview to how disputes against the emergence of 5G heightened during the pandemic. Although Dr. Curtis admitted to not having done much research pre-COVID because she started her PhD in 2018, she argues, like Shkee, the considerations for the growing technologies should be taken into account when producing contemporary geographical knowledges.
Overall, it was clear from our interview with Dr. Curtis that she has a structured way in which she does research, through her threefold approach, whether it be interviews, discourse analysis, or ethnographies. Within all of her research, it was clear that a feminist approach ran throughout, and that there was a clear consideration of ethics during each process. The way Dr. Curtis does her research means that she is producing situated knowledge that reflects the social setting in which she collects it, whether it be incorporating the power relations she is experiencing or the fact that there has been a clear shift to digital research after COVID-19. The research that Dr. Curtis is both collecting and delivering exhibits the contemporary geographical knowledge that is now becoming increasingly objective and interconnected.